This is the Untold Italy Travel Podcast, and you are listening to episode number 173.
Ciao a tutti and benvenuti to Untold Italy, the travel podcast where you go to the towns and villages, mountains and lakes, hills and coastlines of Bella Italia. Each week, your host, Katy Clark, takes you on a journey in search of magical landscapes, history, culture, wine, gelato, and of course, a whole lot of pasta. If you're dreaming of Italy and planning future adventures there, you've come to the right place.
Ciao a tutti, I hope you're all doing super well. Today we're headed back to beautiful Umbria to delve into one of the most important local rituals in the region, and that's the olive harvest and the first press of olive oil. If you've been listening along for a while, you'll know that I think Umbria is one of the most underrated regions of Italy. It is a place that's revered throughout the country for some of the most beautiful hilltop towns, delicious foods, and fascinating local festivals. But for some strange reason, visitors seem to pass it by, with a few exceptions like Assisi. Now, we love taking guests to Umbria on our very special group tours of Italy and to watch their faces when they enjoy the beauty and local traditions of this land. And of course, we always build in hyper-local experiences like the olive harvest into our group plans, as after many, many years of travelling in Italy, we know that these are the very special moments our guests will cherish the most. So today I've invited our friends Sarah and Salvatore, or Sal, from the beautiful La Cuccagna agriturismo near wonderful medieval town of Gubbio, back onto the show to share with you why the olive harvest in Umbria is so very special. We'll get started after this quick break. Have you ever dreamed of a private luxury Italian escape? Take a classic trip to Italy with everything taken care of in 5-star luxury style with Joe Banana Italy. From the moment you arrive, you won't need to worry about a thing. Simply relax, enjoy the sights of Bella Italia, from the enchanting canals of Venice to the ancient wonders of Rome, and let Joe Banana Italy give you the Italian vacation you've been dreaming of. To learn more, visit their website at untolditaly.com/Joe Banana. That's untolditaly.com/JoeBanana for Joe Banana. Bentornati, Sarah and Sal. Welcome back to the Untold Italy podcast.
Ciao, Katy.
Ciao, Katy. Thank you for having us back.
Oh, it is so great to have you back on the show and hear your voices and I can see your faces after such a beautiful visit last year. And so for our listeners, we were lucky enough to pop by into La Cuccagna one evening in late June, and we were spoilt rotten by Sarah and Sal, and they even managed to coax out the last of the fireflies to buzz around us as we enjoyed a delicious dinner. Now, I could go on, but how about you introduce yourselves and La Cuccagna to our listeners who may not have heard our earlier episode?
Hi, Katy. Hi, listeners. We're Sarah and Sal, and we are an English-Italian couple. We're here at La Cuccagna in Umbria. The last time I introduced myself on the show, we had some return guests which listened to it, who were really pleased with it, but they did laugh to themselves because they know us well. They come back every year. And they said, Sarah, we wondered whether Sal was actually there. So I'm going to try and keep this brief and not hog the whole introduction to myself. But Sal and I met many, many years ago now in England on the Marlborough Downs. Sal, at the time, was living in England and he had a top-up job at the weekend teaching paragliding, and I was one of the students at the paragliding school, and he took complete advantage of his position of authority and...
Yes, I did.
And, well, here we are 22 years later in Umbria and loving it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we thought that, we had a dream, of running a place that would, because we love so much traveling, we thought that, if we buy a place and have constant contact with travelers, will kind of keep us into the zone, let's say, so that we could, travel through the eyes of other people when we were here, and 20 years later almost, we're still here enjoying it. Like we built this place here in Umbria, which we call La Cuccagna, which by the way means like, so life as you want it to be.
Yes, La Cuccagna. We're always asked, what does La Cuccagna mean? It's a mythical utopia in Italian. So for Italians, that means it's a place where there's no work, good food, lots of wine. And at local festivals, you often find a La Cuccagna tree, which is a greasy pole with cheese and ham and wine hung on the top.
Why have I not seen the La Cuccagna tree? That's amazing. I love it. So for everyone that's wondering, so La Cuccagna is an agriturismo, which is I don't want to call it accommodation. It's more of it's a destination, really, especially La Cuccagna, and it's in the middle of the Umbrian countryside, and it's perched on top of a hill with a gorgeous view over the valleys below. And you describe what else you do at La Cuccagna, because I think it's important everyone knows.
Well, so the Cuccagna, like we try to offer like, sort of a home-to-home, like, sort of place, but with all the benefits of being in Umbria, where like, food is amazing, like, the view is, sort of great. The medieval town and cities are just something like, sort of that take you back in the past, but with all the commodities of the present century.
Yes, so first and foremost, this is a home, and lots of our guests, return guests, say to us that when they drive down the drive that they feel like they're coming home. They feel like they're going to stay with friends. And for us, that's the best that we can hope for. That makes us feel very happy. And as Sal said, it's about bringing you back to the past, to another time. And everything that we try to do here is take people off the beaten track, get you off the tourist trail. And if guests would like it, try and offer authentic, local, unique experiences where you're meeting and mixing with real locals rather than commercial outfits. And just getting guests to places which they wouldn't find in guidebooks.
But most importantly, also recharge your batteries.
Yes.
Well, you do have that pool, which I've got to say is pretty stunning, which is like an infinity pool overlooking this just stunning scenery. So you've done very well there. And it's a beautiful property, everyone. But what I think is really special is particularly is what you mentioned, Sarah, is that you've obviously spent a long time building up so many deep local connections and being part of the community. And that's why I invited you back on the show today, because we really want to have a chat and understand a little bit more about the olive harvest in Umbria, because it's a very special time of year and it's so, so important to the community. So let's kick it off and let's hear, when is the olive harvest and what actually happens?
Well, the olive harvest is, we start like towards the end of October and we finish like, sort of beginning of December. But there is a big difference where, so you do an early pick or a late pick. With the time going, a lot of people realizing like, sort of that, the earlier you pick it, you might have like, sort of different costs because it costs you more because, the yield is lower and therefore like you have to spend more to actually like, press the olives because there is more water in it. Therefore like, sort of you pay more because you bring more weight to the press. But the quality of the oil, like, is absolutely amazing. Like we are the early pickers and when we start picking in the 20th of October, people almost look at us and laugh and says, why do you doing this? You're spending a lot more and you can wait another month and you spend half of the money to press your olives. And then we're like, when we actually like, sort of show them the oil, we test the oil and things like that. And, within 15, 20 years now, I would say probably about 80% of the olive growers like, pick by the middle of November, unless there is commercial, like, sort of big properties where they cannot do it because it takes them like, sort of 40, 50 days to actually do the harvest. But to get a top quality oil is always best to pick like, sort of end of October, beginning of November.
Yeah, so at the end of October, some people do a really early pick, but probably the first 2 weeks in November are the most common times, or times when everybody really tries to get their olives picked. But it's the acidity that changes in the oil. And also the longer an olive is on the tree after maturity, the more it deteriorates. So it reduces the quality of the oil. Although when we talk about reducing the quality of the oil, we're talking about a top quality product in the first place. So even if you pick olives in December, it doesn't mean that you get terrible oil.
With the olives, there are, so different properties to the olive oil. It's not just like, so the quality that the actual oil has, it's also like, so the quality of like, so the sourness of the oil. That's a very important, so the part of the olive oil. And obviously the acidity and the burning, like, sort of in your mouth as well, when you actually like taste it, so that's quite a good quality of the oil when you feel that tinkle, sort of down your, back of your mouth,
back of your
throat, like, sort of is a sign that you really like, sort of have a good oil. But we're talking about like, sort of Umbria is maybe like, sort of the smallest producer of olive oil in Italy, like, because we produce very, very little olive oil. We produce probably about 5%, sort of the main, like, sort of region, which is probably Puglia. But the quality of the oil in Umbria is amazing. Like, we work with an acidity which is in between, like, 0 and 0.2, which is the lowest. So it's, even if you in Umbria, even if you pick up at the end of November, we still have an acidity which is like, sort of around about 0.2, and it's still an excellent quality of oil, which in certain, like, so use, like, is that's what you need. But for, doing your bruschetta, you can't beat an olive oil which has been picked and pressed, like, sort of in end of October. And also, like, another thing which is very important, we pick and press within 40 hours. You cannot leave them too long.
So just when Sal talks about 0.2 of the degree of acidity, just to put that into, just to explain what that means. Okay, so when you look at olive oil and people say, what does virgin and extra virgin and all of that, what does that mean? So for something to be classed as virgin olive oil, apart from the fact that the olives have to be completely unaltered, it's just the olive that goes into the press, nothing else. But for it to be virgin, it has to be completely unaltered olives, but also it has to be less than 2% acidity. To be extra virgin, it has to be less than 0.8%. And what we're talking about is 0.2% or less, between 0 and 0.2. So if there was such a rating as extra, it is
actually extra virgin olive oil.
Wow.
As Sal said, the main producers of olives in Italy are Calabria, Puglia, and Campania. But actually, the quality of the oil in Umbria is much higher.
But, having said that, so Puglia, Campania, and Calabria, they produce an excellent olive oil
as well.
It's just like, sort of we have, like, sort of different, like, sort of grounds. We have a very, like, sort of clay grounds with, sort of stony grounds. And so, like, it gives a different taste to the olive oil. And the same things, like, if you go up north and you go to Liguria, they have it by the sea, so it has another, like, quality. Or like by Lake Garda, you have, like, again, a complete different one, like, sort of which, because of the atmosphere there, it's different. And so in Italy, like, each region will have, like, an excellent olive oil and with different characteristics. But obviously, like, we are in Umbria, and so we're proud of our one, and we say it's the best.
This is what I love, because I went once to an olive oil tasting in Lake Garda, actually, and oh boy, were they saying theirs was the best of them. It was so much fun. And also, I've just recently been in Liguria, and yeah, they do. It's a very different olive oil, and the different properties are so interesting because obviously over there they make pesto with olive oil and basilico and pine nuts, and it just never occurred to me that the variety of the olives and the olive oil and I know this now after having many conversations around the provenance of the food, but it was kind of mind-blowing to me that, the pesto in Liguria tastes so amazing because of everything. It's not just, yes, they've got great ingredients, but it's the type of ingredients and where they were grown and all of that. It's very scientific as well.
Yes,
it's absolutely.
Yes, environmental conditions, and again, it goes back to the picking time as well. Depending on how early or late you pick, depends on how well maintained antioxidants and organoleptic substances are. So the taste and aroma, can change so much with when and where olives are harvested,
and how long you keep the olives.
Yes. So Sal was talking about a few things, and your original question about the importance of olive in the community. Going back to what Sal said about the fact that we press within 48 hours of the olives coming off the tree. So that's connected to the community question, because, of course, there's all sorts of different types of olive oil producers. There's small little farms like ourselves, and obviously there are big commercial operations. And how they pick is dependent on that too. So big commercial operations with thousands of hectares of olive trees will use a special olive picking machine, which is clamped to the bottom of the tree, and they sort of open this upside down umbrella underneath the tree, and then the machine shakes the tree, and within about a minute and a half, the entire tree is picked.
Again, there are different ways of picking, sort of an olive trees. So there is picking by hands, just using your hands, obviously wearing gloves, because otherwise it would be much left of your skin, after that picking. Or there is, sort of what we call, machine picking as olive picking machines, which they shake the leaves and they let the olives come down, and these handheld machines, so you can.
But that's different than the one that I was.
About. I'm just going through sort of things. Or you can pick them up with a tractor, which grab the trees and it shakes it over an umbrella which has been laid underneath. Out of all of them, actually, I have to say, out of all of them, the most kind to the tree is the latest one, the one with the tractor. Although it shakes the tree, it doesn't get in touch with the foliage, so it's actually sort of it's got rubber material where it grabs the tree. Where it clamps the tree, and so it's actually the kindest to the tree. The worst one is by hands or by rake, because you actually go very close to the branches, and so you are kind of scratching because the jam for the fruits for the next year is already present, and so therefore you might damage it, and so it's not so kind to the tree, which is a paradox. You would think it would be the other way around, but actually it isn't.
But going back to the how long the olive's been off the tree, commercial operations that can pick a tree within a minute and a half, they get their olives straight to their olive press, so they can pick and press within a couple of hours. Really big operations can do it much quicker as well. But people like us, where we pick by hand and by mechanical hand, we pick like mad for a couple of days, specifically so that we can get our olives to the press as soon as possible, because after 48 hours, they start degrading as the second they come off the tree. And again, when we say degrade, we're not talking about this all of a sudden they're just going to mulch and mold. But because we're so particular about getting the highest quality possible oil, we are really, really particular also. And I'm the olive police when we're picking, because we lay these big nets out underneath the trees. And if anybody treads on the olives when they're on the nets, then I get very cross. But because you
squash it, and if you squash it, you actually accelerate the degrading
process. And then when they're sitting in the crates waiting to be pressed, that's affecting the oil. Again, not that anybody would notice, because you're still going to end up with the most amazing quality oil.
But you notice, don't you, Sarah?
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. And I think we need to get you a T-shirt that says Olive Police.
Yes. One of those bright orange tabards or something.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, it's this passion and attention to detail that makes it so special. So when you're doing the harvest of your own trees, and how many trees do you have, by the way?
We have about 400 trees. We took on very old olive groves, which was abandoned for about 50 years. And we are slowly it's taking us many, many years to bring it back to production. So at the moment, we're picking around about hundreds, because it's taken me time to actually prune them. And because they were let go wild, it takes a long time. We can't go there and do a total prune, because otherwise the tree might die. So it's a question of getting it back to production a little bit at a time. And olive tree normally sort of in the production line, if I can say, sort of where sort of many other regions, it will only last about 40 to 50 years. In Umbria here, we have trees which are most of our trees are about 200 years old. And so it's different a way of picking, because that means picking a 5 to 6 meter tall tree is a little bit more complex than picking a tree which is about 15 years old and is about 2.5 meters, where you never use a ladder, you don't really use so much. And so picking like olives is like I find the most like relaxing and therapeutic experience, because olive trees is like they talk to you. They really like it. So every time you can go, you can have a bad day and go in your olive groves, and you will find the first olives that you meet, like so that you encounter, will tell you, slow down. It's okay. Take your time, and because these trees, which I think that's one of the main reasons is that they use olive branch as like the peace offering most of most of the tales, because it's just like tree which is it's got an amazing aura around it, which calms you down, and so aura, yes, sorry, like. So when you're in picking olives, is always like the great experience.
Piano.
Yeah, it's our favorite time of year. We've come to the end of our season, and quite frankly, we are actually quite exhausted. But olive harvest is almost regenerating, because
for me especially, like we just spent 3 weeks before the olive harvest. I spent doing the chestnut harvest, which is completely opposite. So where like so it's very stressful, hardworking, and
grueling.
Things like. So once I switch over, because it's basically like stop in a day, and then the day after I normally start like the olive picking. Is a completely different atmosphere. Like, it's a great experience. I can only try to describe it, but there's only one way to realize how great it is by doing it yourself.
I think that's the biggest thing for me. Every year, even though it's been a lot of years now since we left the rat race, when we're doing the olive harvest, it's the time of year when I think to myself, yeah, we definitely made the right decision. I'm so happy being here on this hillside in this sunshine, out in the fresh air, and doing this. I think about everybody else stuck back in England in their offices and their 9-to-5 jobs, and I just feel a sense of freedom and the fact that we're
very satisfactory, like
and we're living our lives for ourselves. And everybody always sniggers at me about some of the words I use to describe olive picking. But it's one which it involves all the senses, because there's touch and feel, obviously, from the picking. But underneath our olive groves, there's lots of wild sage and lemon. So there are these just amazing smells, not just of the olives, but of the whole of nature around you. And it just heightens everything. And it's the sounds as well. You can hear the church bell ringing in the local village every half an hour. So when it's coming towards the end of the day, you're thinking, oh my God, we need more time to pick. But
for me, it's more when it's coming lunchtime.
Yeah, the 4 o'clock bell's gone. It's like, come on, pick. And when we sit and have lunch, we actually have the longest lunches than we have any other time in the year. Yeah. We sit and you're just sitting underneath the shade of the olives, looking out over the countryside, just stopping and chatting, and we normally have people helping us. So it's just really social. It's just it ticks all the boxes, and and there's something so rewarding at the end of the day. We're talking at the end of the olive picking. We should really say how we actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, picking, if I can, like, sort of run through so for everybody to know the whole process.
Sure, go for it.
The way that we do it. I'm sure, like, if you talk for 100 people, you have 100 different ways of doing it, because everybody does, like, slightly different, but, and everybody's way is the best. We make an appointment with the frantoio, because obviously, like, so we don't want the olive
press. The frantoio is the olive press.
You don't want, like, sort of press the olives and then make an appointment and realize that they haven't got one for another 5 days, because otherwise products will not going to be the same in 5 days. So we make an appointment normally like in 3 days times. And so once we have the appointment, we start the 2 days before we start picking. So we pick like mad for 2 days. And then at the end of the second day, instead of going home, I go straight to the frantoio with olives.
First thing in the morning when we arrive.
Oh, yeah.
We have to set up our nets, and we've got big 50-meter long nets where we net up 3 trees at a time normally. And most olive groves in Umbria are on hillsides. There's good growing conditions for them, and also Umbria is just full of hills. So we net up 3 olive trees together. So you've got these big, huge nets, which are basically completely underneath 3 big olive trees. And then I'm not so good, even though olive trees aren't high, I'm not good with heights. So I stay down below and I pick by hand, but Sal has a mechanical hand, and he does the high branches, and also Sal gets right into the tree a lot of the time. He climbs up into the middle of the tree.
But that's because we got very tall tree. Normally, like, so most of these, so the young tree, you don't need to climb them.
No, but like we said, our trees are very big, very old. Though one of those shakers can shake a tree in a minute and a half, we take about 2 to 2.5 hours to do a tree. Okay, and so Sal's using his mechanical hand, normally spraying me with olives, and I'm down below, and again, you're going to snigger at some of the words I'm going to use, but basically I pick by hand. We don't use rakes. I don't understand why people do use them, because I don't find them very effective, but also they're very damaging to the tree. But I pick by hand, and you literally get a branch, which is normally dripping with olives. You get a branch and you literally caress your fingers through the branch, and all of the olives plop to the net. So you're not collecting anything in your hands. All the olives are being either caressed to the ground or shaken to the ground, which is why I say you've got to be careful where you step, because obviously the nets become covered in olives. And then when you've finished your, in our case, 3 trees, we gather up the nets. And it's so satisfying when you gather up the nets, because you've been picking for a long time and it doesn't look like you've done very much. But actually, when you gather those nets up, which is normally a 2, 3, 4 person job, and you've got this huge pile of olives.
There's always a lot of betting how many crates you're going to be filling with.
Yes, because then you gather them all up into the middle of the nets, and then you decant them into your crates. And olive crates can normally hold about 22 kilos of. So we always have bets of how many crates we think are going to be on the net at that time.
So how many would you get per tree?
Okay, our tree, normally, the average production of a tree is 25 kilos per tree. But our tree are very old. Normally, a production tree, would take about 20 minutes to do at the most. Our one, it takes about an hour and a half, but we produce about between 75 and 100 kilos per tree, because it's obviously a much bigger tree.
Wow.
The ratio between the time you spend and the olive you get, it depends from the system that you use, more from the size of the trees. Because like I said, if the tree is bigger, you take a longer time, but you get more olives.
And so you must get some help with that, right?
We normally have some help, but most of the time it's the 2, 3 people. We are lucky enough, to be part of the woofing scheme, willing work in an organic farm. So most times,
that's willing workers on organic farms.
That's what I said.
It's what woofing stands for. Like I say, there's lots of terminology on this podcast, it's a bit dodgy, but yeah, that's what woofing stands for. Nothing else in this instance.
Yeah, but I think it's a really fantastic scheme, and then people can get involved and understand these processes and rituals of how you go about it, because I'm sure you made a lot of mistakes along the way to get to this point of where you are to.
Oh, yes.
But just the tenacity of it, and just to keep going and refine your process so that you do come out with this oil that maybe no one else can tell the difference, but Sarah can and Sal can. And that's important to you. And I really admire that. It's just not something like these cities that we live in that's, we just turn up, get our olive oil, and it's probably got 2% acidity, and we don't know what's happening with it. We've got no idea.
I think that in the supermarket, the acidity is going to be way more than that.
Really?
You can't tell the difference. Anybody can tell the difference between commercial oil and olive oil, which is made, traditionally, because the taste is completely different. Like I said, you get the sour taste, the back of your tongue, and
a little tingling in the
throat,
in the bottom of your throat.
And that's the 2 characteristics that you can judge, because the organoleptic property, you can only see them by doing a test. You have to do tests in laboratory in order to see how big the properties are. But those 2, the sourness and the tingliness on your throat is something that you can actually judge yourself.
It's amazing, unless you actually live somewhere and involved in the olive harvest. When you first press olive oil, it doesn't look like it does when you buy it on the bottles on the supermarket shelves. It comes out as almost like a fluorescent green, much thicker texture, and the taste is unbelievable. And that initial taste, only lasts for about 2 weeks, and it's so sour, the flavour, but in an amazingly delicious way.
again, this is another thing. Like with the time as well, once you've done the picking, you choose a frantoio because different frantoio produce different oil. That's another, so big like difference. There are different technique. We do the cold press, which is like it's mechanically pressed with the temperature below 25 degrees, 25, 26 degrees. And so, because there are a few things that actually like degrade the oil, and the temperature is one, the air and the light. And so if you can avoid to get contact with all the three, then you keep the products the way that you press it. We have chosen one which is an amazing place. It's not just by going pressing the oil, it's like a ritual, going there, seeing friends. I normally go there anytime during the day. I've been known to be going to do the press at 4:00 in the morning because that's the only time that is spot. And I wanted to do within the 24 or 36 hours press. And it's just going there, you meet all the other producers. Everybody goes there and brings something to eat. And so we always go there with bread so we can do the bruschetta and try the oil and see sort of what's the quality of the year, because every year to year obviously you have slightly different products because maybe there's been a year which has rained a lot or it's rained very little, more sun sort of and so on.
But just to set the scene on our olive press, because our frantoio is slightly different anyway, because lots of big commercial outfits have their own frantoio because they need to be pressing their olives straight away. Our olive press, our frantoio, is part of a big estate, which is an abbey. The abbey is a ruin now, but it's a beautiful old abbey.
Amazing.
Yes. And as would have been in, centuries ago, abbeys were, and the church were huge landowners. So this frantoio is part of an estate, which is an old abbey with huge olive farm. When the last family that owned it, last person died, instead of leaving it to somebody in the family, they left it to the Children's Hospital in Genoa. So it's a charity. And it's a lovely old, small, traditional frantoio. It's not a huge, big commercial place. So although members of the public do go and press there, only certain select locals are allowed. They don't just take anybody. So it's predominantly for their own estate, but then lots of proper indigenous locals. And after they've paid their staff and the expenses, and the farm is operating all year round with various things, all of the rest of the profit goes to the Children's Hospital.
Plus, they make an amazing, they have an amazing frantoio and he makes an amazing olive oil. So we're very happy with that as well.
And it's in a really beautiful location. And like Sal said, he goes and he helps out down there because he knows all of the guys. And he says that they have bread, but actually they make a big fire and cook steaks and enjoy a few beers.
With the olive groves, so that month there is nothing else happens. So you really have to concentrate on picking the olives. So it's even the workers there, they work about 15, 16 hours a day. They start at 4:00 in the morning, to get, and they finish around about 11:00 in the evening. And so they eat there as well. And with the times, obviously you get friends and, become friends. And so you spend time with them. And so everybody brings something and you have a dinner together while you wait for the machine to do its job.
So Sal makes out that he's still hard at work down at the frantoio.
Of course I am.
When in fact he's hanging out with the boys.
It's all part of the process.
Yeah, it's nice. And I guess you swap a few stories and have a few laughs.
It's one of the ritual, sort of that, you were asking about ritual, around the olive groves. This is a very old ritual about it because it's not only you meet the people that work the frantoio and run the frantoio, you meet all the other olive harvester. And, you sometimes, we only see that month, of the year, because we're busy, we are different part of the hills. But when it becomes that month, we know that we're going to be there. And and sometimes even with my neighbor, which we're always very busy, we are there for hours talking and say, which at the time of the year is very difficult to, organize. It is, I think, probably one of the oldest ritual about, so olive, so picking, people getting to the frantoio, exchanging stories and spending time together.
Although the first question that anybody asks anybody,
what's the yield?
Yeah, at that time of year, what's the yield? What have you got? The yield, Sal talked about it earlier, the yield is the percentage of oil that comes out of the quantity of olives that you picked?
Yeah, so how many kilos? Because with although sort of we buy olive oils in liters, we don't talk liters when we're making olive oils. It's always in grams or kilos. Because we take the product which is not, it's a solid product, the olives. So we weigh them in kilograms. And therefore, we keep the ratio so in kilograms. So let's say we done the kilos of how many kilos of oil you produce. This year, the average yield was around about 15.6, 15.7, which is not bad. But sometimes when you do an early pick like we do, you have a yield around about 11, 12% because there is a lot more water. And the water, once you do the press, the water gets taken out. But then as the olive gets more mature, is there is less water in the olive. And therefore, when you compress it, there is, more oil to, so the product ratio. So it feels so you're getting more oil out of your, 100 kilos, but there's no difference because the amount of olives that you bring or you have on the tree are the same. In fact, they're even less because some of them, they fall on the grounds as they mature. And so the only difference is that if you press in December, you're pressing less kilograms because the olives are lighter because there is less water in them.
Right, yeah.
But the amount of oil that you take out of the olives is always the same. It won't change. What it changes the kilograms that, the weight that you actually press. Because the olives sort of in October, obviously they are more hydrated, so there's more water and so they weigh more. But once you press it, the water gets taken out. We do not have any water in the oil, so the extra weight, it just goes over sort of, I can say down the drain because that's where the water goes into the fields.
Oh, okay. What about the pulp?
With the pulp, sort of it gets to another process where the nuts, which has been crunched in small bits, get separated from the pulp itself. The nuts get separated and dried, which we use it later for, sort of heating up our houses. And the pulp actually gets taken aside, and there are two ways of dealing with the pulp. You can chemically wash it to get rid of the tannin, because the olives are very rich of tannin, and so their acidity, at that point, it goes really high. Or you can wait about 3 or 4 months, until the tannin, slowly, sort of wear itself off, and you can use it. Most of the stuff that is used for fertilizing or for beauty products, there are so many other use of it.
But our frantoio, what Sal was saying about drying the stones, not all frantoios have the ability to do this, but ours does. And when you're left with just the dried stones, which by that stage, if you've ever heard of the cereal grape nuts, that's what the stones look like. They're like little tiny pieces of gravel. We have a boiler which is specially adapted, and we use the olive stones to heat our house and heat our hot water in the winter. So that is our fuel. We don't use gas or electricity. We use olive stones.
I love it. I knew you'd do something creative with the leftover olives.
But not only we have to pay to press the olives, we then have to pay to get our nuts back.
We do.
So we pay twice.
We do pay twice, but it's still cheaper and far more environmentally well. In fact, you can't get more environmentally friendly than burning olive nuts. In fact, actually, when we get some nuts which have been freshly pressed during the time we're picking, rather than being sitting in sacks all winter, you get this lovely aroma of olives coming out of the chimney of the boiler, which is nice.
Oh, it's so nice. Now, I've heard Sal's having a good time down at the Frantoio with his steaks and his... you probably make a few pizzas too, don't you? You're very good at that.
We do.
Yes.
But are there any other celebrations that go around the harvest? Are you allowed to have a cheeky glass of wine, Sarah? Or...
Of course you are. So there is always in Italy, when there is food or when there is people gathering together, there is always space for wine. But there is one thing that actually is very interesting. Normally sort of from mid to end of October until sort of mid-December, there is frantoio aperti, which were different type of association. So they gather together a bunch of frantoi, and they're open for anybody to go and have a look at the process, taste the oil. There are different type of oils, like because there is about 57 different type of olive trees, and we use about like 15 like to make olive oil. Sort of mainly like around this area. Around this area, about 6 or 7, and you can have like an olive oil which is a monoculture. Like let's say like so I'm just gonna name few sort of olive trees that we have around the area. We have a frantoio, which is makes the oil. Then you have another one which is very common around here. It's called muraiolo, and you have like lecino, and so many others like. And so there are some people which just say, okay, I'm gonna just have plants lecino trees, so I'll have an oil which is not so strong, like a little bit of lighter oil, which is great for salads. Or I'll have a frantoio which is stronger, or like we do, we have a mix. We have frantoio, lecino, muraiolo, all three of them, because we find the blend give us like a nice, taste and aroma, which we're happy with. But when you go into the frantoio, like, so many restaurants now here in Italy, like, they'll give you the chance to try them all. And so you can make up your mind which one is best for you.
As Sal said, with the frantoio aperto, which means open frantoi, you can go and taste the olive oil, which you can only get that original taste within 2 weeks. So lots of guests come and ask in the summer for olive oil tastings, and you can go to 1 or 2 places where they might have an early pressed oil and a later pressed oil, where you can tell the difference. But to really taste olive oil and get that very unique, special taste, which I didn't know about until we started picking olives, it is something very, very different. You have to try it to actually understand what people are saying, because it is so particular.
Straight from like coming out of the press.
It's very, very, very particular, and
you can do like it's normally it goes like it's called la strada del Frantoio, which is the street of the press, where you can do even more than one. Like there is a map where there is all the one which sort of are open, and you can just like turn up and sort of have a look around. They show you how to do it, and you can do an oil taste.
But another thing that's interesting at that time of year is that it's the white truffle season. So when you say about festivals and things, actually around here at that time, Gubbio has the White Truffle Festival. And white truffles are very special anyway. And linked back to the frantoio, our truffle hunter, because we arrange truffle hunts for our guests almost on a daily basis sometimes. He's an indigenous to these hillsides, but he works at the frantoio. So it's his little side job doing truffle hunting for our guests. But that's a very special thing to be doing at that time of year and experiencing the white truffle season.
I can imagine. I've just been in Piemonte actually and visited the hills there around Lelanghe, which is obviously super famous for white truffles. But what really surprised me about that area was how built up it is. There was many more villages, like you can see the villages from one place to the next, which actually in Umbria is quite different because it's way less populated. It's much more rural. And, we went to this truffle, grove, where they do the truffle hunt, and I was really quite surprised, actually. I mean, obviously it does produce some of the world's best truffles, right, of course. But I was expecting, maybe because I'm Australian and we've got all these huge open space and wilderness, I was expecting something more like that. But I can imagine in Umbria, because, especially where you are, it's just, a lot of beautiful nature all around you, that you would have like a very different experience to the one that you would have if you're in Piemonte.
Well, I've never experienced the one in Piemonte, but I can tell the experience here is really not just the truffle hunting, also nice, sort of stroll in the countryside. I say stroll sometimes a bit of a climb, sometimes a bit of a, on the hill, but it's definitely sort of nice, experience in the countryside. And
I think that the thing that everybody loves about our truffle hunts is that they know they're getting a real local. And I'm sure we said this last year, so apologies to anybody listening again. But our truffle hunter, he refuses to do what lots of truffle hunters and commercial operations do, which is take along some truffles in their pocket and plant them so they can pretend they found something, so that the people that are on the hunt with them are never disappointed.
No need, to do that, because obviously, so you go into, you learn the experience of, sort of how to search, find them, like, sort of treat them when you find them, or how do you retrieve them. And so whether you find them or not, sort of it's obviously like it makes a difference, but it's not the main.
Yeah, it's the whole
It's just the whole
experience.
experience.
Now, Sarah and Sal, thank you so much for sharing all these beautiful local traditions. I always learn something completely new when I'm talking to you, and something really fantastic. I love the fact that you're heating your home with the olive nuts and the meaning of La Cuccagna. That was really, really beautiful. And so I think everyone should have one of these experiences, as you know, and if they want to do that, how can they stay in touch with you and learn more about the goings-on at La Cuccagna?
Well, two things. That in general, obviously there's our website, and we're always really, really delighted to welcome guests into our home at any time of the season. But we do also offer olive picking holidays for people that would like to come and experience the olive harvest. Obviously, it's at the end of October and the first couple of weeks of November. It depends how many days olive picking guests would like, but on an olive picking day, we would take guests out. They would have the full olive picking experience. We provide a lunch in the olive grove, and then in the evening, we take them to the frantoio to see how the frantoio works and to watch the olives being pressed.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Try the olive as it comes out and take a little bit of oil back with them.
So everyone, we're going to put a link to La Cuccagna on our website, because these guys, you're not really doing social media. They're too busy picking olives and making beautiful dinners and keeping all their guests feeling welcome at home to do social media. And respect to that, I say. Like, it's a much better use of their time. And so we'll put a link to the website into our show notes. Sarah and Sal, thank you so much. Grazie mille for coming back onto the show. And I just really hope that I can come back to Umbria and see you very soon. Grazie.
We do too, Katy. Thank you very much for having us.
I think in our busy lives, we sometimes lose sight of where things come from. So next time you swirl a glug of olive oil around your pan as you prepare your meal, imagine the olive harvest in Umbria and the care and attention that is placed on pulling out all of these beautiful fruits to make this beautiful, pure and delicious olive oil. And if you like the sound of Umbria and its medieval towns and cities like Gubbio, we'd love you to join us on tour later this year as we explore the region during harvest season. There'll be delicious porchetta, local wine and freshly pressed olive oil, and of course, go at the harvest yourselves, for which the region is celebrated. You'll find all the details on our website at untolditalytours.com/Umbria. And you'll definitely want to go and check out La Cuccagna if you're in Umbria and the stunning infinity pool overlooking the peaceful Umbrian countryside. Sal and Sarah have done just a beautiful job of balancing farm life with all the facilities for a relaxing and gorgeous getaway. You can find all their details and information on our tours on the episode show notes at untolditaly.com/173 for episode 173. Thank you, grazie, to all our wonderful listeners for your ongoing support of Untold Italy. I really hope you enjoyed today's show, and if you did, it would be amazing if you gave us a rating or review in your favourite podcast app. If you're using Apple Podcasts, then you need to go to the show page for Untold Italy and scroll down until you see ratings and reviews, and you can leave your 5-star review and message there. We just love receiving them. It makes our day. On next week's episode, we're going to discover another unique way to travel around Italy that you may not have considered. But until then, it's ciao for now.
The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production. Podcast editing, audio production and website development by Mark Hatter, production assistance and content writing by the other Katy Clark. Yes, there are two of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.